clear you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't had anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected, because no one has been able to see the whole picture. Until now.
All right. Whoa, what's going on there with the let's get this all sorted out here. Whoop. Sorry, gang. There we go. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. I'm your host, Grant Levac, and if you found this channel intentionally, then like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what not. It's been a while since we did a live stream, so thank you to all of the regulars that are here. Jimmy, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday night to be here. I have to throw the old goggles on because, again, blind as a badger. Karen's wondering if you are keeping up with the 3i, I presume the Atlas spacecraft, possibly asteroid. I viewed 2 videos so far, which are pretty generic. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be the James Webb Telescope footage has been a little bit disappointing. I thought we'd have a greater resolution on what's come out of that, but I'm not investing a whole lot into Atlas. I think it's more than likely prosaic, but if other information comes to light, great, let's see it. Paul Vennings, it's our alien overlords returning for the harvest. Good to be with you, Paul. Thanks for joining. And Kia ora to you as well. Hoodwink the Ranger, I'm hoping to hear something new. Well, you might this evening. You might see something new that you haven't seen before. Shorter to Cook One, always good to be with, my friend. Thank you for tuning in. Jasmine Sharrock, always good to see you. Thank you for joining, taking some time out of your Thursday. Mark McHiggins, g'day, buddy. Good to see you. Bill Chalker, always good to see you, my friend. It was great to chat with you earlier today. So thanks for taking some time out of your Thursday night to tune on in, my friend. It's good to see you. Lynn, first time for me. Welcome, Lynn. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find it interesting, informing, and somewhat entertaining. And Drew, thanks for joining in. Thank you, Bill, and great to be with you guys. So look, thank you all, wherever you're joining, whether it be at home, down under, or across the pond. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your Thursday evening, your morning, your graveyard shift, wherever you are. So tonight is it's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it because I've been working on this quietly in the background for some months now. So let me pull up the trusty slide deck so we can see. Let's pull up the old screen here. So tonight is all about the Westall flying saucer incident of the 6th of April, 1966. Now, investigate Westall. Well, what's important next year is the 60th anniversary of Westall. And 60 years later, we still are no closer to the truth. We have no official explanation from the Australian government at a federal, state, or local level, or the Australian Department of Defence as to what it was or what it wasn't that was observed in the skies above Westall High School on the 6th of April, 1966. A few others. Jonathan Davies, good to see you, my friend. Thank you, JD, for tuning in, mate. Appreciate you being here. And legend Clark Watson, great interview you did with Reese not so long ago. So great to see you here as well, buddy. And Carla Watson as well. Welcome. The significant other is here. So good to be with you both. Well, let's tune on in, folks. Jump on into it all. First and foremost, just want to thank those that support the channel with a financial contribution. Thank you for your support and helping it grow. So we're talking about Patreon members, Jimmy, Jasmine, we've got Shane, Dan, YouTube member, Telekinetic. If you're interested to support the show, see it grow, certainly a like, share, subscribe goes a hell of a long way. But if you're interested to look at some of the membership options for a couple of gold coins a month, you can certainly contribute to some of the outgoing costs that are associated with running live streams and podcasts, because she ain't cheap. So if you want to check those out, in the description below on Patreon and YouTube. We're also on Spotify. So if you like to listen to your podcasts on Spotify, feel free to check us out there, the Unexplained Rundown. All right, so let's jump in. Now, for those of you that are relatively new to the Westall flying saucer incident of the 6th of April, 1966, this is not going to be a crash course for you. However, I will provide you with some overview and introductory information at the front end, but I would sincerely encourage you to have a look at some of the great documentaries that are already out in the public domain. James Fox's The Phenomenon from a couple of years ago. Ross Coulthart did a special for 7 Spotlight a few years back, Secrets of the UFOs. A documentary 6-part series that I was privileged to be involved in, Close Encounters Down Under, as was Bill. Wonderful 6-part series. And of course, what I consider to be the definitive documentary on the topic, Westall 66, the Suburban UFO mystery, featuring Shane Ryan, researcher who's done a ton of, really the lead researcher, I would say, on the Westall incident now for many, many years, and directed by Rosie Jones. Certainly check that out if you are interested to learn about the Westall incident. Some really good, great documentaries. Obviously, not to blow my own trumpet, but I did a documentary a few years back, had an opportunity to meet with a number of the primary witnesses down at the Grange, densely wooded area, a couple of kilometers south of the Westall High School. Got them on camera, decided to put together a little documentary. So if you want to check it out, the link is in the description below. Not designed to be if anything, it's designed to be a companion piece to the great documentaries and work that's already out there. And we know that, the likes of Bill Chalker and Keith Basterfield have also done some great research on the Westall case, and they both have some wonderful research on their respective blogs. All right, so Westall High School, 6th of April, 1966. So what happened on that day? Well, this is a bit of an artistic rendition of what happened on the 6th of April, 1966. Now, this is not, tried to stay true to the witness testimony and reports from that day. Obviously, it's not a exhaustive artistic rendition, but for those of you that aren't familiar with the Westall incident, this will give you a good visual overview.
Westall High School, Wednesday the 6th of April, 1966. What starts out as an ordinary second last day of term quickly transforms into an extraordinary event, leaving an indelible mark on the lives and young impressionable minds of many forever. At approximately 10:15 a.m., while participating in their morning PE class, a number of students are left dazed and confused at the sight of a strange object hovering in the sky over the southern end of the school. Its shape, that of a classic flying saucer. Moments later, a science class filled with students attent of their teacher's lesson is interrupted unexpectedly with a stunning revelation.
Mr. Greenwood, there's a flying saucer.
Huh? What?
A chaotic commotion quickly ensues.
You need to leave!
The ringing of the school recess bell at 10:20 a.m. leads to a mass exodus of unruly students onto the sports oval outside. There, several hundred students are left in shock and awe as the flying saucer finds their gaze. Some students remain calm and curious. Most do not. The flying saucer motions towards the signature power pylon at the southwestern corner of the school and emits a low-level hum as it hovers above it. Students continue to watch on in both shock and awe as the flying saucer exhibits flight characteristics that defy the known laws of physics. With no visible signs of propulsion, the flying saucer suddenly takes off at a high rate of speed. A small number of fearless students race towards the school's boundary fence in pursuit of the craft, as it moves in a southerly approach to a densely populated wooded area known as the Grange. a location known only too well by school students thanks to their grueling cross-country runs. Moments later, a worker going about his morning rounds of harvesting carrots in the adjacent market garden is confronted by the unknown object. It hovers effortlessly above the tree line and emits no sound. The flying saucer begins to disappear from the market gardener's line of sight as it descends in an arc towards the southeastern corner of the Grange. At the adjoining 8th hole of the Spring Valley Golf Club, a number of golfers going about their morning round are left flummoxed and speechless at the sight of the flying object as it dips beneath several trees that line the edge of the fairway. Suddenly, a high school girl that gave lead chase towards the Grange discovers the flying saucer on the ground, or hovering just above it. Just as soon as she begins her cautious approach, the flying saucer instantaneously accelerates to the sky above. It's gone. All that remains of its presence, a perfectly symmetrical imprint in the flattened grass.
So that was an artistic rendition, folks, that I did for the Westall Witnesses, the documentary. Big fan of In Search Of back in the days, so that may sound a little bit familiar, the voiceover in that rendition. So again, just giving you a visual representation of some of the accounts from that day, putting it into a bit of a storyline there, a narrative. But what is more interesting to look at is the reporting that came out in the days or really the weeks after the Westall flying saucer incident of the 6th of April, 1966. So that's a good segue for us to have a look at some of the actual reporting that came out of newspapers like the Dandenong Star Journal, which is still going to this very day. It may have been called something back then. But what I want to do is I want to show you, for those of you that haven't read it, it's certainly available, readily accessible online, but not everyone may have actually seen this. Let me just pull it up here for us. Where is it? There it is. So let's have a look. Okay, I think this is the one. Let's try this one. There we go. So this was, you can see there, this is I believe it was the Dandenong Star Journal, the Dandenong Journal, there you go, established 1865, date 14th of April, 1966. So this was, what's that? 1 week and a day after the Westall flying saucer incident. So again, not many of you may have actually read this article in its entirety. So let's zoom on in a little bit because I want to read it for you. Title: Flying Saucer Mystery. School Silent. What was it? So let's zoom on in. And again, this is covered under fair use. We're obviously, I will put the old banner up just in case, because I know we are sharing previously reported content. So we are critiquing and review and educating the public on the content that we are sharing. So let me again zoom on in a little bit further for us. It does start to pixelate after a while, but I do want to read this for you, and I'm going to read it for the benefit of capturing on the podcast, obviously. So Clayton, after more than a week of investigation, mystery still surrounds the reported sighting last Wednesday of a flying saucer near the Westall High School, Clayton. Investigations of the report have been hampered by the reluctance of school authorities to permit interviews with eyewitness students and staff members. Several children attending the school and at least one staff member are reported to have seen the unidentified flying object. They are believed to have given corroborating descriptions of the object as a round, humped object with a flat base being circled by what appeared to be light aircraft, which was not obviously depicted in that rendition. It was described as grey or silver grey in colour, but it is not known whether the object appeared high or low in the sky or how long it was observed. Let's again zoom on in a bit more. Investigators call for eyewitnesses. One report said several children who saw the object collapsed and became ill with fright. There have been a number of attempts to explain the sighting as a product of natural causes. However, the Victorian Flying Saucer Research Society has taken the report so seriously that it is inserted an advertisement in a daily newspaper seeking descriptions from eyewitnesses. Vice President of the Society, Mrs. Judy McGee, said yesterday that all attempts to obtain information from the students or staff members at the school had failed. Quote, we have only second-hand reports of the sighting, but believe it could be an important one, Mrs. McGee said. She said she and 2 other members of the society last Friday went to the scene of the sighting and discovered a couple of circular patches where the grass had been flattened. These could have been formed by an object landing or taking off. Army report. However, Mrs. McGee said strong winds had been blowing during the week and these could have caused the grass to be flattened. It was also reported that military personnel had been in the area on Saturday. If this was the case, the area would have been heavily trampled and further investigation of the flattened patches would be useless. An Army spokesperson said yesterday there was no record of personnel in the area on Saturday. Mrs. McGee said she understood that children, when the third column here, that children at the school had been instructed to talk to no one who asked questions about the sighting. This was why the society had made its independent appeal for eyewitness students. She said she believed some of the children had also heard the sound of engines as what appeared to be light aircraft circled the object, or circled. Department of Civil Aviation officials have checked for reports of strange aircraft in the area, but none have been made. A spokesperson for the Bureau of Meteorology said a weather balloon equipped with a radar reflector and radio, radio transmitter was released from Laverton last Wednesday morning. Under the influence of strong winds, it could have drifted to the Clayton region. This could have explained the reported sighting of a flying saucer, he said. However, the Victorian Flying Saucer Research Society will continue its investigation. So again, incredible account that came in the paper a week after the incident. But then there was another report, more reporting only a week after that. So on the 21st of April, 1966, there was this follow-up article that came out. So let's have a look at this one. Who were 5 pilots? So let's zoom on in and have a look. Again, also in the Dandenong Journal, flying saucer mystery deepens. Who were 5 pilots? Clayton, the unidentified flying object reported over the Clayton area on April 6 was almost certainly observed by pilots of several light aircraft which flew close to and chased the object for a considerable time. A detailed description of the object given by a science teacher at the Westall High School has discounted theories that the object was a weather balloon, an aircraft, or a flock of birds. Descriptions obtained from eyewitness students at the school and reports of sightings from other nearby locations, because we have witness testimony that was observed several kilometers away from a student of another school, D. Sadake, who is in the documentary, The Westall Witnesses, that I did. So descriptions obtained from eyewitness students at the school and reports of sightings from other nearby locations have confirmed that an object or objects of inexplicable origin have appeared in the sky over this district in the past few weeks. These facts have been uncovered by journal reporters in their efforts to penetrate the wall of secrecy which was hastily thrown up after the sighting by students and staff at the Westall School on April 6th. And on the left here, this is an image of Marilyn Eastwood, now Marilyn Smith. I'll read it. Pictured, a second-year student at Westall High School is one of the youngsters who watched the unidentified flying object from her school playground on April 6th. The object left a clear impression on Marilyn's memory, and her description of it I don't know what that word is. I can't identify it. With those given by other students and staff members who saw it. For the journal, she drew a sketch of the object reproduced above. So that's Marilyn Eastwood, now Marilyn Smith's drawing at the time. Marilyn described the object as round with a hump on top and round things underneath. Her sketch closely resembles sketches and photographs of other unidentified flying objects reported from many parts of the world. And then we have going down to, this is Andrew Greenwood, beam of light like a disc. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. There we go. We'll go a bit more. That's as far as she goes. Okay. So the journal reported the sighting last week, but attempts to obtain detailed accounts were hampered by school authorities. Students and staff are understood to have been instructed to talk to no one about the incident. And makes you ask the question, why? Didn't want to cause a panic, who knows? Anyway, last week the journal was able to obtain only the information that the object sighted was round and humped with a flat base, grey or silver grey in colour, and being circled by what appeared to be light aircraft. It has now been reliably established, second column, that the object was in fact chased by 5 light aircraft and that the pilots were obviously in a position to observe it. However, the absence of any record of this number of aircraft operating from airstrips in the vicinity, namely Moorabbin Airport, at the time of the sighting has deepened the mystery. Officials at Moorabbin Airport say a dozen aircraft took off from there on the morning of April 6, one of which was on a cross-country flight. Other craft were on circuits and bumps. Training flights, 2 were flying to the southeast of the strip. The Westall School is 3.5 miles to the northeast. The Royal Australian Air Force, the RAF, had no aircraft operating in the air at the time. One plane, piloted by Mr. Bob Ford of Smith Street, Thornbury, was flying somewhere in the area at the time of the sighting, but Mr. Ford said he didn't notice anything unusual in the air. The science teacher at the Westall High School, Mr. Andrew Greenwood, who sadly passed away earlier this year, who this week became one of the first to help break the silence surrounding the incident, said he had observed the object clearly. He said 5 light aircraft were circling the object and were flying at a relatively low altitude. The aircraft had played a cat and mouse kind of game with the object, Mr. Greenwood said. He described the object being chased by the aircraft as like a thin beam of light about half the length of a light aircraft. It was silver grey and seemed to thicken at times. The thickening was similar to when a disc is turned a little to show the underside. The object was never really stationary, Mr. Greenwood said. It seemed to move from side to side and up and down. At first, there was no plane apparently observing the object. At first there was one plane apparently observing the object. Later, Mr. Greenwood noticed 5 aircraft which attempted to follow the object as it casually. Is that casually? Let's have a look there. Occasionally accelerated back and forth from east to west. Mr. Greenwood first saw the object when it rose into the air from behind pine trees near the school. After about 20 minutes, I think that's supposed to be later about the end of the morning recess, Mr. Greenwood looked away, and when he looked back, it had disappeared. All details of interviews conducted by the journal during the investigation of the Clayton sighting have been passed on to the Victorian Flying Saucer Research Society, continued on page 2. And we didn't read this one. This wasn't one. So an indication of sightings can be attributed to known causes is is the case of a sighting by 10-year-old Neil Dees of Camella Court, Daveston. On Tuesday, April 12th, between 8 and 8:30 a.m., Neil was travelling in his father's car in Wellington Road from Stud Road. He noticed a round object hovering around the SEC terminal station in Wellington Street. Neil drew a sketch of what he saw, reproduced it right. At first, this was regarded as a possible UFO sighting, but comparisons between Neil's sketch and Meteorological Bureau photographs confirmed that Neil had almost certainly seen a balloon. Again, not necessarily connected to Westall, but they included it in the article nonetheless. Now, let's continue with the rest of that article on page 2. Again, this is all just good context for those of you that have maybe not read these articles before. And we'll finish off with the rest of the article here. What happened to the 5 pilots? Let me zoom on in. Oh, I can't go anymore, I'm afraid. Sorry, it's a bit on the right there, folks. Continued from page 1. Members of the society have cooperated in the investigations and are now studying much of the information detailed. Although the interviews have helped to confirm the sightings of an unidentified object and to gain corroborative descriptions of it, there are still many unanswered questions. Apart from the obvious puzzle of the origin of the unidentified object, the greatest mystery remaining is that of the 5 aircraft that were sighted flying around it. There is no doubt that the object was circled by light aircraft, but all attempts to obtain details of aircraft in the area or to track the pilots have failed. The questions that need answers are: where did the aircraft take off and land? Why, if they were obviously chasing a strange object in the sky, didn't the pilots make an official report? Particularly when the Royal Australian Air Force had a remit to investigate unusual aerial sightings, UAS, in leading up until 1996, basically. Why, if they were obviously chasing the strange object in the sky, didn't the pilots make an official report? Reread that. Why following public? I can't read that. Why following publicity over the? I can't read that word. It's too faint for me. Hasn't any of the pilots come to light with the information? There are questions that may never be answered. So there you go. So that was reporting in the weeks immediately after the incident. It's always good to look at the reporting at the time, because obviously the closer things happen to the date of an incident, any criminal investigator or detective will know they want to try and get a statement from a victim as soon as it's happened, because it's still fresh in their mind. Obviously, there's the fog of not so much the fog of war, but the fog of what happened. If there's a flight or fight response, that can obviously cloud maybe their judgment. But obviously, detectives and investigators always want to get testimony from folks as soon as they possibly can after it has happened. So that brings us up to date, where next year is the 60th anniversary of the Westall flying saucer incident. And what's incredibly frustrating for folks like myself, Bill, Keith, Shane, Ross Coulthard, is that there is no documentary evidence that has ever seen the light of day from the Australian government, federal, state, local, or the Australian Department of Defence as to what was observed in the skies above Westall High School on the 6th of April 1966, or what landed or came close to the ground at the Grange a little over a kilometre south of the school. So I decided to, following a petition that I submitted to the House of Representatives a few years ago, asking that the Australian Department of Defence commit to a formal review of its long-held position on UAP, that move along, folks, there's nothing to see here, asking them to assess the potential national security threats and safety of flight risk that UAP pose. That petition secured 759 signatures, which I'm very proud of, but obviously nothing was done. It got a response letter from the Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, saying that UAP is not a problem for Australia, US problem. We've got safety procedures and reporting protocols in place that are sufficient when actually they do not. Basically reiterating the fact that the Australian Department of Defence sees no scientific or other compelling reason to devote resources to the investigation of UAP. Very, very different time that we live in 2025 compared to when they came to that formal position in 1996 and they washed their hands investigating UAS or UAP. So let's have a look at the petition. So I decided to take it upon myself to submit. Let me show this on screen so we can see where we're at. And this is a current active petition. So petition EN 7396, request for an independent inquiry into the Westall incident. If you haven't signed the petition, if you're an Australian citizen and you're just as interested as the witnesses to get answers on what happened on the 6th of April 1966, I would encourage you to sign the petition. The link is in the description below, and share it with your friends, family, social. If it's important to you, like it is me, trying to advocate for transparency for the witnesses, and I'm genuinely interested to learn what it was that was observed in the skies of Westall, I would encourage you to sign the petition if you haven't already done so. So what does that petition look like? So this is the current petition, which I submitted months ago, but it only recently got accepted because of the change in government. You know, the 48th Parliament, the 47th Parliament, there was cessation of that Parliament. We had to wait for the 48th Parliament to come into effect, and then the House of Representatives to meet, where they have a petitions committee puts forward all of the petitions that are submitted, and it's free to submit a petition. If you're an Australian citizen, you want to submit a petition, ask the government to do something, you can. So this is the petition, currently open for signatures. And let me just do a quick refresh of my screen here. Petition reason. On 6th of April 1966, over 200 students and teachers at Westall High School in Clayton, South Victoria, witnessed up to 3 unidentified objects in the sky above their school, with reports one of the objects descended towards or landed at a wooded area south of the school known as the Grange. Despite the scale of this event, no inquiry has ever been conducted, leaving a significant moment in Australian history shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Nearly 60 years later, an investigation is warranted for several reasons. 1, despite the risk posed to people, property, and safety of flight, which there was a clear and present risk to people, property, and safety of flight, no official explanation has ever been provided by the government as to the source, identity, and intent, and I use those words very deliberately, of what was observed at Westall, and I'll tell you why I use those words. 2, allegations of a government cover-up, including the rapid response of military personnel, confiscation of evidence, witness intimidation, and non-disclosure of a comprehensive report compiled by the then Department of Supply, which is now defunct, demands scrutiny to ensure transparency and accountability. 3, the Royal Australian Air Force, the RAF, ceased handling reports of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, in 1996 after determining there was no scientific or other compelling reason to continue to devote resources to the recording and investigation of UAP. As this continues to be the official position of the Department of Defence today, an investigation may help inform a formal review of this long-held position. The request. The petition asks, we therefore ask the House to establish an independent inquiry to uncover the truth of the Westall incident, honouring the experiences of those present and affirming Australia's commitment to openness and transparency. And there are 23 days left to sign this petition. It's as easy as just selecting the sign petition link and entering in your first name, last name, I think some contact information, and away you go. I'm very proud to report there are 183 signatures in only the first week. So very, very, the more signatures we get, I mean, it's already secured more than 50 signatures, which ensures, it doesn't 100% ensure, but it warrants a formal written response from a minister. I anticipate that would be the Minister for Defence, Richard Marles. And that will be if there is a formal written response, that will be the first document that we have seen from the Australian government, the Australian Department of Defence, that formally acknowledges Westall in any documentation, because nothing has been released. There's nothing available in the public domain. Now, why did I use the words specifically source, identity, and intent? Well, those of you that have watched my channel before will recall that in February of 2023, Senator Peter Whish-Wilson questioned then Chief of Air Force Air Marshal Robert Chipman about why the Royal Australian Air Force had sought additional information from the US Department of Defense via the Defense Attaché in Washington, D.C. about the shoot down of not just the Chinese spy balloon, but those 3 unidentified aerial objects. And when Senator Whish-Wilson asked Air Marshal Robert Chipman, why have you sought additional information on those 3 incidents, not just excluding the Chinese spy balloon? Air Marshal Robert Chipman's response was, because we want to identify the source, the identity, and the intent of those objects, and we want to see what learnings can be gained from the US response to those events. So we want to, as an Australian taxpayer, I want to know what the source of the object was above Westall High School, what its identity was, and what its intent was. Now, there have been some hypotheses put out there in the past. Keith Basterfield put out the high-bow hypothesis, a high-altitude balloon. You saw in that reporting, the Bureau of Meteorology, there was reports of a weather balloon. But if you talk to the primary witnesses, they'll be the first ones to tell you that what they saw was not a weather balloon. They knew what hot air balloons looked like. They had seen weather balloons previously. High bow, a little bit different, a much significantly larger high altitude balloon. But I don't know, if you speak to these witnesses, look them dead in the eye, they're incredibly compelling, and they're pretty adamant that what they saw was not a balloon. They had no explanation for what it is they were looking at in the sky in Westall. So again, I would sincerely encourage you to sign the petition if you haven't. It may go nowhere, but it's always better to try and fail than fail because we never tried. And again, if it secures a written response from the Australian government, Australian Department of Defence, acknowledging the Westall incident, well, in my eyes, that's a win, because that can then help support maybe further public pressure in the lead up to the 60th anniversary on the 6th of April, 2026. So again, do have a look at that petition. Now, what I found interesting is a wonderful researcher on X, goes by the handle. Let me just pull this up on screen for you. TP Loft 2008. Recent. I don't have the date there, but it is. If you just do a search by his handle, you'll find this. It was posted within the last week. This was interesting. The official synoptic maps from the Bureau of Meteorology for both the 5th of April 1966 and the 6th of April 1966. Winds to a minimum of 7,000 meters, so 7 Ks, likely extending to 11,000 meters, 200 HPA, almost certainly would have pushed balloons to the northeast and east on those days. Now, why is that important? Well, let's have a look briefly at where, if we're considering that it is a balloon, let's say something like Project Highbow, a high altitude balloon. Well, let's have a look at where Highbow was launched from. If we pull up Google Earth, we can see that there's good old our spot down under. So let's have a look at Mildura. That's Mildura. That's where I believe it was Mildura. I think it was Mildura. It was Ballarat. It was one or the other. No, it was Mildura. It was Mildura. So if we now zoom on out, well, where is Melbourne? Down here. So if there are winds, operating to the northeast and east, does that indicate that it would be moving down in a south westerly fashion? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. There might be brighter minds in the chat that know meteorology better than I do. But And anyway, nonetheless, I found it to be an interesting find of those synoptic charts by TP Loft. So always appreciate his due diligence when he is looking for historical data. So hopefully that's been interesting, folks. Again, I didn't want to go too deep on Westall flying saucer incident, but again, for the benefit of those that might be new to the channel or don't know much about the Westall incident, just some introductory content there, namely looking at the reporting and obviously that artistic rendition. Hopefully that's been of interest and of value. Let's have a look at some of the comments that you have submitted. And again, sorry to hear you're still a bit under the weather there, Bill. Hopefully you're back in action in no time. Shorter to cook one. No reporters' names for the Westall article, or was it a repeat article from another paper? I don't know if having reporters' names on all of that was a front page article. I honestly don't know. There are probably others that can speak to that. I would suggest Bill or even Shane Ryan. JD, Jonathan Davies, any radar contacts from Moorabbin Airport? Again, I don't know the answer to that one. Shane Ryan would certainly be well versed in answering that. I don't think radar records were ever secured from Moorabbin. I know that Shane's done some research on Moorabbin Airport, but again, I would have to hit him up for some questions on that front. Jimmy, the audio of Mr. Greenwood's interview with Dr. James McDonald was epic. Yep, and that's still out there. You can actually have a look and listen to his testimony to Dr. James McDonald. And then he went dark for many, many years. Again, Andrew Greenwood, he said publicly before he passed that there were uniformed military personnel that rocked up at his home unannounced, unsolicited, that it was either the night of or the following nights of the Westall incident, basically threatening him, giving him a veiled threat, and said, you're not to talk about what it is you saw because it will be very, I'm paraphrasing, it'll be very easy for people and those that you work with to reach the conclusion that you were drunk on the day of the 6th of April, 1966. And that would potentially threaten his job, his future employment opportunities. So given a clear threat to shut up and not talk about it. And again, the school children were told by the principal and others not to say anything about it. Why? If it was so prosaic, why were they told to shut up about it? And I think that's one of the things that irks the witnesses to this very day, is that they were really pissed off that they were told to shut up about it and never talk about it. If it was something prosaic, why? Was it to avoid a mass panic, or if it was something that was top secret that the Australian government or Department of Defense didn't want the public to be aware of? Because we know that Project Highball did have scientific equipment and testing. NASA was partnered with Project Highball. It was through the Department of Supply, as was the ONR, the Office of Naval Research, I think it was. You had other scientific institutions as well. If there was secret scientific testing equipment, and it was to fall into the wrong hands, would that potentially be cause an issue? I have no idea. Again, that's just a hypothesis that Keith Basterfield put forward, and everything is on the table until it's not. But no documentary evidence has ever seen the light of day to confirm, to validate that it was in fact a high altitude balloon that was responsible for the Westall incident. There is documentary evidence that shows that there was a launch that was scheduled for the day prior, on the 5th of April, 1966, but there is no evidence to suggest that launch ever went ahead. So again, I know that's been frustrating for a lot of researchers, not being able to get any answers on, well, if it was Project Highball, there's nothing that's popped up through research and FOIA requests and National Archives that validates that hypothesis thus far. So we have to entertain all possibilities. And again, you listen to the testimony of the witnesses, they say it wasn't a balloon. So there we go. That's where we're at. Let's have a look at some of the other comments before we soldier on. GT937, sounds like the description by the JAL pilots in Alaska. don't know the specifics of that case, but I know there was. Yeah, sorry, no, you're right. The Japan Airlines flight, that's the one. Fascinating case, that one, and I think John Greenwald might have just recently put out an article on that using the power of AI that he has on the Vault, Black Vault. So that's a fascinating case, the JAL flight. David, what do you think were these NHI vehicles or ARVs? I don't have an opinion on that. I don't have enough information to inform an opinion, but if you listen to very intelligent, assumably very credible people that are in the intelligence community and the defense that have come forward and claimed that the US is in possession of non-human craft. We've heard this from David Grush, even though it's questionable whether he's a first-hand witness. We've heard this from Jake Barber. We've heard it from Lou Elizondo. We've heard it from Eric Davis. We've heard it from a lot of folks, but no evidence has ever been provided to support those claims. That's why I support the efforts of the US Congress to try and find answers to those questions, because I think it's they're doing their due diligence to try and validate those claims or invalidate those claims. They're just following the leads wherever they lie. And if it's true, then there's a lot of that raises a lot more questions. But if it's all BS and it's all a lie, that even raises some more concerning questions, that there are some fairly credulous folks working within the intelligence community and the Department of Defense in the United States that are accepting on blind faith stories and anecdotes of there being NHI craft, crash retrieval, reverse engineering programs. I don't know, but I would love to find out the answer to what these claims are. And I think you have to applaud Congress's efforts for at least asking the question and trying to get to the bottom of it. Malcolm, great to see you, my friend. Always appreciate your engagement on X, and thank you for tuning in. Much appreciated, my friend. Yep, Jimmy, such a fascinating case. No documentation has ever been found. UAP Aotearoa, always great to see you, Colin. Kia ora, Aotearoa, Katoa. You'll have to translate that for me one day, my friend. Sorry, I'm a bit late. I'll catch up here in NZ tomorrow. Always good to see you, Colin. Shorter quick one. Sorry, where is the petition located? You can access it in the show notes below. If you just go to the description of this live stream, in the third paragraph, I think you'll find the link. So if you click on that link, take you directly to it and you can sign. Aaron, always wonderful to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining in. Yes, as Colin says, please go sign the petition. Take a minute out of your day and do it. Thank you, Drew. Yes, thank you, Mel, if you go and sign. Thank you also, Sasha. Really appreciate your signing. And thank you, Pippa, for reposting this stream. Good on you, Short Order Cook. You've signed. Nice one. Again, if you're not an Australian, unfortunately, yes, you can't sign it if you're not an Australian citizen, but you can certainly share it. So if you have friends, family, your social network, maybe there are a couple of Aussies that you're associated with or follow you, share it, because you never know. There might just be another Aussie out there that's interested in the Westall case and wants answers as well. I just want to go through. So thank you, Mel, for signing. I really appreciate you signing on that one. James Rigney. Geez, we're getting all the folks in here tonight. Thanks for joining, my friend. Always good to see you. I appreciate you tuning in. 10K. Howdy, Grant and all. Good to see you. Thank you for joining 10K. And or as James Rigney is affectionately referred to as Riggers. Always good to see. It's good to see so many folks in the chat. Bill has chimed in. Yes, there is evidence of data collected from the high-bow flight the day before, but no evidence for high-bow at Westall. Good distinction. No documentary evidence for a high-bow in the vicinity of Westall on the 6th of April, 1966. Thank you for pointing that out, Bill. Thank you, Bill, for signing the petition as well. Again, we'll see how it goes. If it can just get a written response from the government acknowledging Westall, then that will be a first. And I think that's an important one. So thank you all for your comments there. And please, as we go through, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. So now we're going to switch gears. And those that watch this channel know that these live streams tend to go for a decent chunk of time, but I'm committed to getting it under the 2-hour mark tonight, folks. So we're at 52 minutes. We're tracking well. So the rundown, let's have a look at some other bits and pieces, news, interesting tidbits that have been going on down under. We're focusing on Australia tonight, folks, and we're focusing on what I recently came back from in Queensland a couple of weeks ago. I came back from the Australian UFO Festival in Cardwell, Queensland. Bit of a bugger to get to, flight to Cairns, then a 2-hour drive. Beautiful spot though on the coast. Wonderful people, wonderful town. They really get into the spirit of it. Activities, they make it a full weekend event, and it brings in a lot of tourist dollars. They've got activities for kids. They got a foreshore party. They do speakers, 2 days of speakers. I was fortunate to be included, as was Bill, Ross Coulthard and Bill both did speaking engagements remotely. There was Peter Curry, did a session remotely as well. You had some other podcasters and researchers there. Triffin Pert from Unlocking the Code, Anthony Goodall from Encounters Down Under, Lee Phillips, a filmmaker, Rowan Bowe, experiencer. Unfortunately, she was unwell on the day of her engagement. She didn't get to speak. Cheryl Gottschall, you have an interesting, really interesting cross-section of folks. Unfortunately, the sessions weren't recorded, and I think that's one valuable bit of feedback for the organisers next year, with rumours that they want to take it to Brisbane, which will make it more accessible, so a lot of folks can get there. But it really was a jam-packed event, and I'm just a bit bummed that because I was so keen to see all of the other presenters, I didn't get a chance to enjoy all of the other activities that they had going on. Because if you just look at, if I just pull up for you, kind of give you a sense as to what was happening over the course of those days. Let me just pull this up. Where is it? Make sure I've got the right one here. Where is it? There we go. So this was the program. A little bit hard to see. So you see they had a decent area covered for events, but this is just to give you a snapshot of what they had. And I have to say, full credit to Thea, the event organizer, and Rowan Bowe, who lent as she leaned in and did a lot of heavy lifting as a volunteer, as did many others. They had a planetarium, Stories in the Stars. C-Files Forum is kind of like their speakers that they have for 2 days. C-Files Tours, they actually had tours that would take you around to sites where there had been reports of activity, UFO, UAP activity. They had a car boot sale. They had a pickleball open day. They had a shed open day. They had arts mosaic workshop, starboard encounters tour. Boat cruises, alien invasion foreshore party. Moon phases workshop. They had ancestral connections workshop, monster market, cosmic kids, crab races, Aussie barbecue. So just a really fun family event over an entire weekend. Obviously, for the folks that were really keen to learn about the UFO UAP topic, they'd come to the C-Files Forum to hear from speakers. But again, I was really thoroughly impressed. My first conference or festival that I've ever gone to that's UFO related. So I was really impressed, and I hope that it only gets bigger and better next year. And I do hope next year that they do record the presentations, because I thoroughly enjoyed hearing from the likes of Bill, of Ross. We can just get a sense as to who the folks were that were lined up to speak on Saturday the 9th. Ross, myself, Cheryl, Anthony Goodall, Roger Stankovic was also, he was there in person. It was great to spend some time with Roger, Triff and Pert. And then on the Sunday, you had Bill do a video conference dial-in, Peter Curry, Karen Swain, Rowan Bow unfortunately wasn't able to do hers, Andrew Radjovitz, and Lee Phillips. So a really cool lineup that they had for this year, and I would say probably one of the best lineups that they've had based on the feedback that I got from the event organizers and people that attended. So that's kind of just giving you a bit of a rundown of the Australian UFO Festival. If you find program schedules and speaker lists a little bit boring, will allow me to give you a bit of a visual recap of what happened at the Australian UFO Festival. So this was a brief video that I put together, just kind of recapturing the spirit of the weekend. So feel free to give this a look-see. Here in beautiful Cardwell in Queensland. It's nice to get out of chilly Melbourne for a couple of days. I'm up here for the Australian UFO Festival. It's going to be a jam-packed schedule. We got 2 days worth of presentations. Ross Coulthart, myself, Roger Stankovic, Bill Chalker, Griffin from Unlocking the Code, Anthony from Encounters Down Under, Lee Phillips, filmmaker. Really interesting mix of speakers talking on a diverse mix of topics and subjects as well. There's a foreshore party with people getting dressed up in costumes and people hitting the beers and having a dance. So they've got tours, market stalls, got activities for kids. Just a really jam-packed schedule, and it's a shame that I'm not able to. I'm keen to see as many of the presentations as I can, so I'm not able to get away and see some of the other activities it's got. But very, very impressed with what I've seen thus far. I'm heading off to do my presentation shortly, and yeah, looking forward to a good couple of days up here in Cardwell, Queensland. So check it out. The Australian UFO Festival made a triumphant return to Cardwell in 2025, with the C-Files Forum kicking off the weekend at the Cardwell Community Centre, with a diverse mix of speakers from all around the country presenting on a variety of subjects. On arrival, attendees were presented with a fantastical display of alien lore before they secured their seats for Ross Coulthart's introductory and very informative Q&A session, followed shortly thereafter by my presentation on Australia's lack of engagement on the UAP topic. In between presentations, I had the opportunity to connect with some of my fellow speakers, but the real treat was hearing from Bill Chalker and learning of his research on the Tully Nest incident. By night, the coastal town of Cardwell came alive with the foreshore party, packed with locals, tourists and families, really getting into the spirit of the festival and costuming up for the occasion, with the kids going all out with their vibrant and out-of-this-world attire. For the big kids, there were glow sticks, grease to go along with their beers, plenty of good tunes to listen to, and little green men at every turn. Some adults spared no expense on their exotic costumes, while others preferred to sit back, relax, take it all in and enjoy the atmosphere. Oh, and of course the beers. Oh my, so many beers. And if you've heard the expression before, get on the beers, well, Cardwell did not disappoint. Every man and his dog and little extraterrestrial were getting on the beers. Early the next morning, while most of the town was sleeping off their hangovers, I decided to get down to the market and check out the massive selection of wares and trinkets. There was something for everyone: apparel, fashion accessories, fresh coconuts, wild fruits, ornaments, books, old and new, 3D printed keepsakes of the extraterrestrial kind, home decor items, custom signs, and toys. Plenty of toys. I even picked up a couple for my little ones back home, but they were really just for me. And then I wrapped my afternoon doing a fun podcast with some fellow speakers. But before I embarked on my 2-hour drive back to Cairns, I decided to take a trip out to see the famous Tully Nest UFO site. And it did feel a little like I was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre country at times, but eventually I did catch up with Anthony and his crew from the Encounters Down Under podcast. and we continued our search for the famed Tully Nest site. We even asked a couple friendly locals for directions, and they were only too kind to oblige. The countryside and its surrounds were truly breathtaking, and it was thanks to a random local who had lived in the region his whole life that we were able to secure permission to access the property owned by the Panisi family and tour the famed site of the Tully Nest. Our local escort and tour guide gave us a rundown of the incident and shared his recollections from that January 1966 day, almost 60 years ago.
That's where it was, right here. Didn't have any grass in that green there. Yeah. That's where it was, right there, you know.
Did it leave any marks down there?
Shit, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was rolled up like a bloody cyclone bit in there, you know.
And we knew that we were in the right place.
In 66, my father's mate heard this tremendous hissing sound. The hissing got louder and he turned around and looked up, and what he saw was something that I don't think he ever forgot. It was a UFO rising out of the lagoon over here, tilting, hesitating. It just went above the tree line and then it took off.
And if you haven't listened to Uncropped for the ABC's Expanse podcast, I recommend it. All right, we are at the location of the Tully Nest. I've got podcaster Anthony there in the background from Encounters Down Under, and we met a local who's been here for lived here his whole life, 80-something years of age, and just in there is the Tully Nest. Anthony's got a drone. He's going to put it up and see if he can get some good footage in there, because there are apparently crocs in there, so I'm not going to go getting any closer to have a look. In that area there is where allegedly the Tully Nest was formed. So obviously vegetation's changed quite a lot over the decades, but yeah, fascinating. It was a truly surreal feeling being on location where one of Australia's most fascinating UFO sightings occurred back in January 1966, only less than 3 months prior to the Westall flying saucer incident in Victoria. Before we departed, we took the opportunity to thank Shane Panisi for granting us permission to tour his property and for his generous hospitality, because we ended up sitting down with him in his home for over an hour, picking his brain. So that was the Australian UFO Festival, and it did not disappoint. If you're thinking of getting along next year, I highly recommend it. So there you go, folks. That was the Australian UFO Festival. And again, it was not really planned to try and have a look at the Tully Nest site, and it all just happened to fall into place. Fascinating case. And that's actually where I wanted to spend the rest of our time this evening. Walk those of you through that are not familiar with the Tully Nest, Tully Saucer Nest case. Really, provide you with some good information on that. So let's have a look at, if I pull up now, that little video montage that you saw, I put that out in a video on YouTube a week or so back, and I put it on X as well for people to take a look at. And I was quite amused after I put it out on X that I was honored to start getting my own meme. So UFO Shane put out a nice little meme, as did Spooky. I got a bit of a buzz from the fact that I've now I've made it, Dad and Mum. I've reached my ambitions in this world to become a meme. So, but the Tully Nest case is is truly a fascinating one. And for those of you that have not had an opportunity to listen to the ABC's Expanse podcast, season 4, Uncropped, would highly encourage it. The first 3 episodes go into great detail on the Tully Nest case. And I know there was a question in there earlier, is Uncropped on iView? So it was predominantly done as a podcast, audio only, but I've added the link in the description below. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can. There was a short video package that the ABC put together on that. So you can also watch a portion of the entire Uncropped series on video. It's on YouTube. So have a listen to it if you haven't. It came out last year. I think it was October, November. Fascinating case. And having had an opportunity to now be there at the Tully Nest site, it just makes it that more interesting to listen to. So and truly was, Jimmy. It was just like being, if you have a chance to go to, before going to the Westall site at the Grange, I'd never been at an alleged landing site of a UFO, flying saucer, before. So just fascinating feeling to be on location where something that was alleged to something that was so fantastical that was alleged to have taken place 60 years ago is just quite a truly surreal feeling. And then obviously hearing from some of the primary witnesses firsthand, not just Westall, but obviously Shane Panisi. He was 6 years of age when this went down, 19th of January, 1966, only about 3 months prior to the Westall incident, which is an interesting coincidence or timing. And his father, Albert Panisi, it was he and his best friend or good friend, George Pedley. George Pedley was the one who actually saw what he described as a UFO raise out of the lagoon, and that's where we're going to go now. So for those of you that didn't really take in or get a sense as to, well, what is the Tully Nest incident all about? Because that was only my very, very brief recap of the Australian UFO Festival and where I went, the Tully Nest site. So do give Uncropped a listen if you want to, because it is a fascinating case. But for those of you that are interested to stay with me and go through a bit of an overview now of the Tully Nest site, well, the ABC, the folks behind the Expanse podcast, season 4, Uncropped, have done a wonderful interactive article that walks you through the Tully Nest incident. And so I'll put up my my fair use banner, because I know this is ABC's content, but it is fascinating how they've done it. And I'll turn the audio on as well. So let's just go through it. So those of you that don't know a whole lot about the Tully Nest incident, you've got a good introduction. And then we're going to get into the weeds, because I like getting into the weeds. So there's a sugarcane farm in far north Queensland. It feels isolated, private. About 5 minutes drive from the farmhouse is a lagoon. These days, bulrushes just cling to the edge of the murky brown water. But 60 years ago, it was thick with them. Something happened in those bulrushes that is still unanswered today. In fact, the questions it raised ended up becoming so much bigger than the mystery itself. And then the name of the article, The Cane Farm Crop Circles and an Enduring UFO Mystery, by Chris Calcino and Danielle O'Neill, who narrated the Uncropped podcast for ABC's Expanse. We did a wonderful job, and this is 24th of November last year. So I'm going to play it with the audio so you can listen to some of the testimony as we go through. So I thought this would be a good way to introduce those of you that aren't familiar with this historic UFO case. Many describe it as Australia's Roswell. It's just a fascinating one. At first light, a boy and his father sling rifles over their shoulders and trudge barefoot through squelching grass. They're hunting for proof of UFO landings on their sugarcane farm. A young Shane Panisi, who is the gentleman I was photographed with in the back end of that video package, trails in lockstep behind his dad, Albert, eyes fixed on the swamp of mosquitoes surrounding him as they approach the lagoon. The whole of his back would just be black, and they're all full of red blood, Shane says, regarding the mosquitoes. They survey the scene for any disturbances to the bulrush reed bristling from the murky water and triple check that no crocodile has split into residency during the recent floods. Best stay armed just in case. And these are photographs, obviously taken of the Tully Nest in the the days after the incident.
You know that buzz you get, tingly feeling. Even as you're walking down, sometimes I get this, oh, there's something there. We all had this sense on this farm. Anyway, you get around down to there and you look around, there it is. It's something you can't explain.
So with last night's sleep still clinging to the corners of their eyes, they hoist the rifles above their heads and slide into the warm marsh. Paternal bonding comes in all shapes and sizes, wading through stagnant, larval, rearing water in search of saucer nests is just part of the daily routine for this father-son duo. Something happened here that knocked the family off its axis and tormented a mild-mannered man for the rest of his life. An impression left in this very lagoon would grow into a roaring wave of global crop circle fever. And there are still secrets to tell almost 6 decades on. An unlikely protagonist. George Pedley was a wiry young banana farmer in far north Queensland when he encountered what he later described as a flying saucer. The gentle bachelor in his 20s worked the plot of land beside the Penisi cane farm at AARO, which was actually the name of the town just south of Tully, and built a rough but sturdy shack for his tractor and tools. And I believe that's a photo of George Pedley, the nest in the background there. It was the era of the space race. Aliens, UFOs, and interplanetary exploration were part of the pop culture furniture. Less so, perhaps, around Tully. The town then, as today, prided itself on being the wettest place in Australia, a simple agricultural and logging community carved into the skirt of a rainforest-blanketed mountain. It seemed an unlikely spot with an unlikely protagonist for a mystery that would foreshadow a rash of UFO and crop circle reports all over the world. Even so, in the grips of a sweltering wet season in January 1966, Tully went into a tailspin. The sighting. Shane Penisi was 7 years old, I think it was 6 or 7, at the time, and living on the same cane farm in the single-story house he still calls home today. He remembers his whole family pulling into the driveway after a beach trip on the afternoon of January 19, 1966, to find their neighbour sitting on their front steps. George Pedley had an uncharacteristic look of agitation etched across his face. He started stuttering a bit. Something had happened. Shane's dad, Albert...
I remember George getting out.
Well, let's play this.
Slowly, and there it was. We all walked over there and it was just numbing. There was a nest. The rest of the lagoon was just full of bull reeds all standing up, and there was this nest sitting there. I didn't know what the hell was going on. All I saw was this thing in the middle of the lagoon. I didn't know what they were discussing. I didn't understand what George was talking about. It was bull reeds. It was swirled around, and it was just not a mangled mess. It was just like I explain it as your cotton woven shirt. It looks like something was spinning. I remember George getting out slowly, and there it was. We all walked over there, and it was just numbing. There was a nest.
Oh, I think we just listened to that, didn't we? So let me.
The rest of the lagoon.
Let's just read the rest of that.
Full of bull reeds all standing up, and there was this.
Shane's dad, Albert, spoke with George for a few minutes before they all hopped in the ute. Adults up front, kids clinging on in the tray, and drove to the horseshoe-shaped lagoon at the edge of a cane paddock. That's when they saw it, and that was obviously Shane talking about the nest. A perfect circle of flattened bulrush reeds in the middle of the water, about 9 meters in diameter and floating like a pontoon. There were no markings around it, no trail from machinery that might have fabricated the unusual imprint. Back at the house, George opened up about his experience. He had been driving his tractor that morning when he heard a tremendous hissing noise and hopped out in search of a punctured tire. When I first heard the report of the hissing, I thought, well, if there are reports of crocs in and around the area, which there are, was it a croc that was making that hissing sound? But Shane alluded to the fact that no, it wasn't the hissing. There was a very distinct hiss from a croc, and this was something that George had not heard before. He heard the hissing getting louder and louder. Then he turned around and looked up, Shane says. He saw a UFO just above the treetops, tilted like it hesitated, and then it was gone. And where have we heard before UFOs kind of tilting on their side and off they're gone? Westall, Bob Lazar, think of his story and him what you will, but there are accounts that all saying the same sort of thing. Then he looked back in the lagoon and saw the water swirling. Shane clearly recalls his neighbor picking up 2 teacup plates from the table, tipping one upside down and placing them lip to lip. This is what he had seen: a flying saucer illuminated with bright lights and hissing away in a puff of blue vapor. The term "gone troppo" is Australian slang for being driven mad by excessive heat and possibly a few too many swigs of the flagon. George was not a drinker. Still, the banana farmer couldn't shake the suspicion he had contracted an acute case of the tropical malady. Illness. George, being George, just thought, I'm just seeing things, Shane says. And obviously some of the reportings, clippings from the Time local paper. George went back to the shade of his shed and boiled a billy, cup of tea, to get his faculties in order. Questions were piling up. After a while, he returned to the lagoon and discovered this floating mat of reeds, almost woven in a clockwise swirl into a perfect geometric circle of botanical fabric, or so the story goes. The Bush Telegraph. Police were eventually called, and word of this weird encounter spread like a contagion as the small town rumor mill went into overdrive. It was dubbed a saucer nest, a sort of prototype crop circle 2 decades before the latter term. The latter term would become popular and everyone wanted a look. Now, we're going to have a look at this very interesting document that's available in the National Archives of Australia. This is actually the police report that was taken of George Pedley's account. He was aged 28 at the time. Cars roared onto the farm in their hundreds, with yahoos knocking over. How would you describe a yahoo these days? Drunken Aussies, bogans. That's the kind of where I'm going. Knocking over cane, drinking beer, and climbing the reedy pontoon, which could hold a man's weight with no trouble at all. It was a lot for a 7-year-old boy to take in. Shane remembers the dust from the traffic being so thick that his mum couldn't hang the washing. It was one car after another, he says. They parked anywhere they could. They walked over plant cane, broke down trees. They just walked through the lagoon. The family was eventually forced to retreat to their nearby beach shack until things died down. It would take a while. And this is obviously a collage of some of the reporting of the day. You can see just how many articles there were around the time in the years following. News reports all over the country featured photos of the splayed, flattened reeds, and reporters spent the night getting mauled by mosquitoes in hope of experiencing a visitation. They never got one, but they did get plenty of fodder for a readership desperate for anything to do with aliens, flying saucers, and cosmic expeditions. How do you explain the unexplainable? Wild theories started popping up about what could have caused the strange phenomenon. Obviously, it wasn't aliens, was it? Everything from helicopters and reed-eating grubs to whirlwinds and waterspouts were proposed as logical culprits. And then you've got some good old cartoons from back in the day. Rigby on flying saucer nests. Incredible nesting at this time of year in Queensland. Well, if there was a saucer here, what about the cuppa and spoon that goes with it? There was even a theory that the purported saucer nest had been created by ducks swimming in a circle. George's honesty and mental stability were questioned in news articles and cartoons, and to his dying day, he felt slighted about being publicly ridiculed, as I imagine one would. Locals who knew him and the landscape were more inclined to believe his story.
We had to walk through grass, 10, 15 minutes. There's a photo here I've got. It shows where the main pad was. Well, if you go from the photo, we went towards the back and around. We walked right through heavy tea tree sort of scrub, and there was another lagoon on the other side, and we saw another 3 pads, different sizes, different shapes. We had to walk through grass.
So let me just read. That was Valerie. Keenan was a child when the saucer nest mania swept through Tully. Her dad, a cattle station owner from one of the area's original pioneering families, was already something of a UFO enthusiast. He would sit out on the lawn in his chair and observe the night sky and talk about what he would do if someone, a UFO, landed, she remembers. He was one of a few locals to receive an invitation from George to visit the saucer nest shortly after its discovery, and he brought Valerie in tow. For all the interest in George and his encounter, there remained a secret to which only a handful of people were privy. It went almost entirely unnoticed by all those hundreds of trespassing sightseers and headline-chasing journalists. Given the media circus was in full swing, Albert and George weren't keen on bringing too many others into the fold, but Valerie knew. There were more so-called saucer nests in the Horseshoe Lagoon. Even stranger, these shapes would keep appearing on the farm for decades to come. And that's true. One of the last things that Shane Panisi told us when myself and Anthony, another podcaster, and a few others were sitting down and talking with him, he said his last nest that he saw on his property was back in 2012, some 13 years ago. What does that mean? I have no idea. Tully Nest, no hoax, says farmers. Article. Other farms, other farmers. The crop circle is now such a pervasive cultural touchstone that it's easy to forget the term wasn't coined until the 1980s. Sporadic mentions of comparable formations pop up as far back as 1678 when a woodcut pamphlet published in England told of a mowing devil at work in Hertfordshire. The story went that a farmer had refused to pay labourers exorbitant price to harvest 3 acres of oats and swore that the devil should mow it rather than he. That night he saw the field go up in flames. By the morning, any sign of fire was gone and the crop was cut to perfection in a manner no mortal man was able to do the like. Crop lopping Lucifers aside, it wasn't until the Tully saucer nest sensation that these stories really found their stride. Keith Basterfield is a UFO researcher who in 1973 investigated an eerily similar case in an oat-filled border town in South Australia. And this is
in an anti-clockwise direction and woven like a mat. There were no footprints around it. There was no other markings. It appeared that it would have had to have been made from the air because there was no way of getting through the crop without damaging the crop.
How did you inspect it there on the ground?
I sort of just knelt down, touched the crop, ran my fingers underneath the matting, lifted up the matting, and then he said, come and have a look at the next one. You could hear a rustling sound as you pushed the crop apart. We were all just wondering what on earth he was going to show us, and then he simply said, have a look. We came across a freshly made, swirled circle where the crop had been pushed down in an anti-clockwise direction and woven like a mat. There were no footprints around it. There was no other.
It just plays on loop, so we lost the first bit there. So Keith, wonderful researcher, both he and Bill, I have the greatest of respect for. They have done a ton of research. They still have active research and report their research on their blogs, which I've linked Bill's blog in the show notes below, and I've linked Keith's blog in other live streams that I've done. Keith, so just reading the rest of this article again for the benefit of those not well versed with the Tully Nest incident. Keith says 7 of these shapes were scattered across the farm and he would investigate similar reports over the years. For some, saucer nests had become the subject of genuine scientific inquiry. Unfortunately for believers, their credibility was dealt a catastrophic blow in 1991 when British artists Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley admitted they had faked hundreds of the celestial glyphs across the UK since the 1970s. Crop circles, no shortage of those in the UK. In a bizarre turn of events, those British artists pointed to what happened at the Horseshoe Lagoon in Tully as their inspiration. So fascinating that it was the Tully Nest incident that inspired these hoaxers to go out there and start doing all these crop circles in the UK. Now, whether or not all of them are fake, I have no idea. I've never done any research on crop circles. Let's see if there's any audio with this one. I don't think there is. Okay. But
it tends to be both sensationalized and somewhat.
Oh, no, it's not. It's the next one. So let me just, we'll come to the next audio piece in a moment. But authorities were not simply dismissing reports outright. Brett Biddington, who I've talked about on my channel before, is a former Royal Australian Air Force intelligence officer who spent years investigating UFO reports for the military. He was once tasked with driving to Bendigo after local media went into a frenzy over strange lights appearing in the sky in the 1980s. He got a first-hand glimpse of how the hunt for a headline can whip up hysteria and misinformation. It tends to be both sensationalized and somewhat trivialized in the general media, he says. So let's see what Brett.
It tends to be both sensationalized and somewhat trivialized in the general media. As I recall, had a headline at one point that the Air Force confiscated the imagery taken by the young man in Bendigo. Now, we didn't confiscate his imagery. I asked him if he would allow me to take that film to our central photographic establishment and see if we could make any sense of it for him. But of course, that doesn't make a good story to sell newspapers.
What about the Westall incident there, Brett? Mrs. Robinson had her camera confiscated, allegedly. Brett says military interest in UFOs was very real, but not because of any perceived threat from little green men. There was intense interest by both sides in the Cold War, the United States on the one hand, the Soviets on the other, to try and understand what the level of their technologies were with regards to space, he says. RAF investigations into UFOs wrapped up in the 1990s and really never kicked off again down under. A small percentage of cases remain unexplained, like what happened in Tully. Some measure of vindication. George Pedley's memorial plaque at the Tully Cemetery features a small embossed figure of a horse cocking its front leg and the epitaph husband, father, grandfather, and brother. A man's life summed up in 5 words. He was a quiet farmer who, according to those who knew him, never sought nor enjoyed the limelight that was thrust upon him. To this day, his widow, Helen, chooses not to speak publicly about the Saucer Nest incident out of respect for her late husband and the derision he experienced. However, she has meticulously collected snippets from decades of newspaper and magazine articles that mention the encounter and neatly compiled them in a manila folder at the local library. George died age 85 in 2022, around the time a fundamental shift was happening in the public perception of UFOs, or UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena as they're often now called. 3 years ago, the United States government published a report into 144 UAP sightings between 2004 and 2021. That's referring to the ODNI's preliminary assessment on UAP, which released on the 25th of June, 2021. It was inconclusive in terms of identifying the nature of these phenomena, but it did not rule out the possibility of advanced tech from foreign nations or extraterrestrial sources. In 2022, the US Congress held its first hearing on UFOs in more than 50 years, and we've covered this extensively on this channel. A new government branch called, now this kind of goes away from the Tully incident, so in the interest of time, I won't read all of it there, but I do want to come back to the Tully bit. Dozens more nests over decades. If there was one person who never doubted George's reliability as a witness, it was his neighbor, Albert Panisi. He would visit the lagoon every day for decades, jotting down notes of any disturbances and sending them back to UFO researchers in Brisbane. Shane remembers his dad on the phone and speaking in code to those researchers to avoid government infiltration, and even connecting a camera to electromagnetic equipment so it would automatically shutter if a disturbance was detected in the lagoon. To this day, he believes there was government surveillance of the activities at the farm. And Shane believes that to be true as well. There was a reason for all this cloak and dagger stuff. The Panisis had a secret. Valerie Keenan and her dad were among a select few locals who were shown the other saucer nest that had also appeared that fateful January 1966. There was another lagoon on the other side, and we saw another 3 pads, different sizes, different shapes, she remembers. It was just sort of like something that had come down from above, and when we saw the other tree, there was no way in the world you would have got a vehicle of any time in there. And there's obviously another nest. And it doesn't stop there. Those early mornings spent waist deep in the lagoon with parasites lapping at their veins and rifles held above their heads were not the most comfortable father-son expeditions. But for Shane, they were beautiful moments spent with the man he idolized, and they didn't always come back empty-handed. The pair never saw a spacecraft themselves, but Shane swears saucer nests kept appearing until a decade ago. I couldn't tell you the number, 25, 30 more, he says. Towards the end, I didn't even keep marking it down. You know, it's very scary for your kids. I saw, but I didn't mark it down. The last saucer nest. Shane says the last marking appeared about 10 years ago. He says over the past 20 years, the frequency of appearances has decreased, which the family attribute to the changing landscape of more scrub being cleared for cane. It seems odd to come out almost 60 years on with these sensational new claims, but Shane has his reason. The reason
it's just not only a nest in a lagoon.
Let's listen to his audio there.
Old people and a lot of heartache and a lot of detective work, a lot of hard yards, which hasn't really produced any answers. So where do you go from now? Me, I'm at the end of my farming time. You ask me what's holding me back here, what's the biggest thing that's going to hurt me? It's this, walking away from it. Sorry, I've got to walk away from it all. It's my life. I've got to leave and forget and don't look back.
So you can hear the raw emotion there from Shane. And I observed that firsthand when I sat down with Shane in his house. He at times did get emotional, and he just wants answers. You know, he wants answers for his father. He wants to know, why there was, and he does believe that the ASIO had surveilled him, and that the footage that automated shutter footage that they had sent off, they'd sent it in the post, and it got intercepted at the post office. It never reached its destination, and it was Shane Panisi alleges that it was intercepted and taken, and it never got to its end destination for analysis. The recent shift in public perception towards, and one thing I will note is the hour-plus long conversation that I and others had with Shane Panisi. I believe Anthony Goodall from the Encounters Down Under podcast is planning, with Shane Panisi's permission, to broadcast that interview, or really just Shane sharing his accounts. And we obviously asked him a few questions along the way, but fascinating conversation. And I do hope Anthony puts it out shortly, because it's one I would certainly encourage you all to look at, and one that I want to look back over as well. The recent shift in public perception towards UFOs is one factor, but there's something much more existential than that. That 7-year-old boy is now an old man himself, and this lagoon is where he feels closest with his dad. But it's time to sell the farm. Shane recently survived serious heart surgery, and his kids won't be taking over the reins. He's terrified that whoever buys the farm will bring in the dozers and fill the lagoon to fit in a few more rows of cane. Now, he didn't mention anything about selling his farm. We didn't ask. That's obviously his personal business. What's the biggest thing that's going to hurt me? It's this, walking away from it, Shane says. I've got to walk away from it all. It's my life. I've got to leave and forget and don't look back. Shane's voice trembles as he sits in the same dining room where Albert and George drank tea after that very first sighting in 1966. He feels like a weight has been lifted. I'm the last that's going to be involved in it, so now's the time for the public to know. And that was the interactive article. Very, very well done. Obviously, great reporting from Chris Calcino and Danielle O'Neill. I think the reason I wanted to read through that and play the audio, because I thought it was a really good introduction for those of you that have not been exposed to the Tully Nest incident before. Again, I don't know the ins and outs. If anyone does, Bill Chalker has done a wonderful job researching the Tully Nest incident in the decades past, as have many others. And that kind of is a good segue into, and I know there have been some comments which I want to come to in just a moment. Short order cook one, you didn't have to do that, my friend. Greatly appreciate the donation there. Very, very generous of you. That will certainly go into the coffee jar or maybe the paying the podcast bills jar. So I do appreciate your support there. So let me come back to, now that you know a little bit about the Tully Nest incident, there is some really good information that you can access in the National Archives of Australia on the Tully Nest incident. And again, to researcher TP Loft 2008 on Twitter, he actually put in a link where, and I believe I've added it in the show notes below. So if you want to have a look at the Defense Air Force intelligence documents regarding the Tully Nest incident, you can find it in the National Archives, starting at page 56 and through to page 160 and page 164 onwards. So I'm going to show you, I'm not going to go through all of the documents, obviously, but what I found interesting was that you could read, let's just pull this into view here. Where is it? This one here. So if this is the document in the National Archives, 211 pages, not just all on the Tully Nest, but I'm going to jump to page 166 because this is, oops, sorry, is this the right one? Where is it? Crap, don't tell me I've got the wrong one. Here we go. No, I want to come to, no, I'm not 60, 68. There we go, 166. There we go. So this is the police report that was taken from George Pedley on the 26th of January. So this is only, what's that? That's a week after it all went down. And like I was saying before, always good for an investigator or, whether it's a detective or a copper to get a witness statement, as soon as possible after it happens. So let's actually have a look in the actual police report in what was the report on the Tully Nest incident. Name of observer, obviously George Alfred Pedley, age 28. Banana grower. Date and time of observation, 19th of January at approximately 9 a.m. Period of observation, about 15 seconds. Manner of observation. Traveling on a tractor about half a mile from farmhouse of Albert Panisi, Rockingham Road, Uramo. Attention attracted by hissing noise, clearly heard over noise of tractor, similar to air escaping from tire. Checked tires and was looking about for source of noise when he saw object about 25 yards ahead. No optical instruments used in sighting. Where was the object first observed? Object about 25 yards ahead at height of about 30 feet rising vertically. What first attracted the observer's attention? The loud hissing noise. Did the object appear as a light or as a definite object? Definite object, no light visible. If there was more than one object, how many were there? It was just the one object. What color was the color of the light? Light, gray, dull, non-reflecting. What was it? Its apparent shape. Two sources face to face. Was any detail of structure observable? Object about 25 feet long and 8 to 9 deep. No structural detail observed. Was any method of propulsion observed? No. Was there any sound? Loud hissing sound which seemed to diminish as object rose. Height of angle of elevation, first seen at treetop height, 30 feet, 30 yards maybe, rose vertically to about twice the height, then departed climbing at about 45 degrees, extremely fast, no estimate of speed, but much faster than an aeroplane. State any experience which enables observer to be reasonably certain about the answers given 1617. It was near treetops, and these gave observer a good basis for estimating height. The second page of the report. Direction of flight with reference to landmarks or points of the compass. Rose vertically to about 60 feet and then departed southwest, climbing about 45 degrees, appeared to be rotating, interesting, for full time observed. Did the object remain on a straight path, deviate, or maneuver at all? Straight climbing path. See obviously 27. Was any trail of exhaust vapor or light seen? No. Where did object disappear? Mid-air, receded into the distance. Existence of any physical evidence such as fragments, photographs, or other supporting evidence. Clearly defined near circular depression in swamp grass at point from which object seen rising about 32 feet or yards long and 25 wide. Grass flattened to surface of 4 feet of water, I guess, lying in clockwise curves. Weather conditions, clear sky, hot, sunshine. I imagine it would have been really hot that time of year in Queensland. Location of any air traffic in the vicinity, unknown, but checked by RAAF Garbett. Location of any meteorological stations in the general area. Cardwell and Innisfail post offices are weather reporting stations. Cairns Airport would be nearest station. Any additional information? Observer reported this matter to Tully Police at 7:30 p.m. on the 19th of January, the day it happened, and at 7 a.m., 20th of January. Went with me to the side of the depression. So this is obviously the report of the police officer. Side of the depression in the swamp. His version then included the information that the object, see point 20, rose vertically, appeared to dip slightly, and then went off in straight climbing path. He said, and further, that there was no smell or combustion, there was no scorching of grass or trees visible, that the flattened grass or rushes was quite green when he first saw the depression on his return that afternoon. The grass had turned brown. In this matter, I formed the opinion that the depressed area in the swamp grass had been caused by a this is absurd, caused by a small helicopter that the observer in the early morning bright sunlight shining on the rotor may have mistaken the shape. His description of the takeoff led some stretch to my opinion. However, there was cleared land to the east for some 200 yards where such an aircraft could have been more safely landed instead of the position indicated by the observer close to the trees. Later, I was informed by the Wallace Evans of 68 Bryant Street, Tully, an electrician, that he has seen similar markings in a swamp at Curramine Beach and is quite certain that it was caused by a whirlwind sucking up water into a waterspout, uprooting the grass and laying it out in a similar pattern. I think they call them willy-willies. At 3:30 p.m. on the 21st of January, I took a sample of the grass at the site and have forwarded it under separate cover on even date. A.V. Moylan, Sergeant, 26th of January, 1966. And I won't read through the other, materials that are in that National Archives document. You can certainly have a look at it if it's of interest. But again, fascinating that is a police report a week after it all went down, and you can read that in the National Archives. Now, what I wanted to call attention to is some of the good work that Bill Chalker has done, just for point of reference, point of comparison. Bill interviewed George Pedley in 1981, I believe. And this is an article that Bill did in 2022 after George Pedley's passing. And so I want to read you a transcript of Bill's interview with George Pedley and see if you can pick out anything, any subtle differences. I'm kind of reading this again for the first time. So George was generally reluctant to talk widely about his experience. I spoke to him on a number of occasions, but found him to be reluctant to resurrect his experience. However, George was interested enough to assist a serious attempt to clarify what had happened. On 13th of June, 1981, I interviewed him. Bill Chalker asked, "From what I have read, you saw what you called a spaceship. You didn't really describe it in much detail." "Oh, I would never have said I saw a spaceship. That's what the papers were quoting you as saying." "Well, that's wrong for a start. I saw an object, something going up, and that's it. Just what it was, I don't know." "What did you really see?" "Well, I just saw this thing in the sky and it took off. It was about 25 feet when I saw it, 25 to 30 feet in the air when I saw it." It was in the air when you saw it?" "Oh, yes. I didn't see it in the lagoon as they say." So again, this kind of shows you where reporting sometimes can get inflated, they can get it wrong. And that's true often, that reporters will get small details wrong. "Oh, yes, I didn't see it in the lagoon as they say." "That's wrong. The marks were in the lagoon and it just took off from there in the air. It went up another 25 feet and it just flew straight out." "So you just saw it rise up from a position of about 20 feet when you saw it?" "That's right." "And the position where you first saw it, was that in the same spot where the nests were found?" "You mean the object?" "Yes." Bill says, "Yes. When you saw the object rise up, you say you saw it originally from 20 feet in the air, roughly about 20 feet in the air." Response, "Yeah." Bill, where the nest was subsequently found, was that directly beneath the position?" "That's correct." "What sort of size would you have put on it?" "Size, the size was pretty right. I'd say 29, 30 feet, something like that." "Did you get the impression of an object, or was it a sort of solid looking thing, or gaseous?" "Gaseous." "Gas." "Well, I thought it was a solid thing at the time. I didn't see any portholes or anything like that, antennas or anything like that. They could have been there. I'm not saying they weren't there." "What sort of shape would you have put it on?" "Something similar to like two saucers, face to face." "What sort of color?" "It seemed a silvery gray, a blue gray, like that." With regards to the media assertions that he saw the object rise up out of the lagoon, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding there. I would say it was this is from George. "I'd say it was their fault anyway. I'd never say that." "So for how long was it in sight?" We worked it out to say 30 seconds, 15 seconds in the report. Not a huge discrepancy. "In terms of the unwanted fame his UFO experience brought him, the most prominent coverage came an episode of the 1994 British program Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Universe. A crop of circles. George appeared in the program driving his tractor adjacent to the site of his January 1966 daylight encounter and pointing out the location, Horseshoe Lagoon. Here are some of the frame grabs from that episode. I recommend you seek out the episode." And then Bill includes obviously there's George there, and some of the screen grabs from that episode. So and we're going to come to that's obviously a photograph of the Tully Nest. Photos came from Albert Panisi's archive collection. That was George pointing out the UFO's departure. George in front of the saucer nest. That's George and Albert Panisi inspect the site. Albert showing how the floating nest could take his weight. There's just water directly underneath it. And then obviously some of the press coverage. So I was grateful that Bill was able to share that with me, because I just was interested to see, as you like to see how people's recollections and accounts change over time. And they do. That's expected. Obviously memories change. That would have been 66 to 81. What's that? 15 years later. So, yeah. And late to the party. I'll go to the comments in just a moment. So that really brings me to the interesting stuff, because I want to show you what has only recently come about. And this is complete credit to the wonderful work that Shane Ryan, who again was who's the lead researcher in the Westall case. He does some wonderful work trying to find golden nuggets in the National Archives of Australia. And Shane runs a private Facebook group dedicated to the Westall flying saucer incident. And he periodically posts information about his findings that are from other interesting cases. And he only recently, earlier this month, was able to secure or find in the National Archives a letter from a gentleman by the name of John Buist to, get this, Prime Minister Harold Holt about the UFO incident at Uramo, Tully, in Queensland on the 19th of January 1966. So Shane was good enough for his Facebook group to write out a complete transcript of the letter from John Buist to Harold Holt. And this 4-page original can be found in the National Archives. So I'm going to show you these letters that were to the Prime Minister of Australia in February of 24th February 1966. This is only a month after the Tully Nest incident or the observation from George Pedley. And so it's I'm not good at reading handwriting, so I'm going to read off of the transcript that Shane kindly put out in his Facebook group, and he permitted me to share this with you. So at the very top left says Mission Beach, 15, and then the telephone number. Bingle on the right, Bingle Bay via El Arish, North Queensland. The date, February 24, 1966. Dear Harry, Prime Minister Harry Holt. Herewith, the result of my rather thorough investigation into the sighting of the flying saucer at Uramo. I have had the young man, George Pedley, here and closely questioned him on all aspects. On the basis of this, and also as a result of questioning a large number of people acquainted with him at Uramo, I have formed the opinion that as a witness, he is a quite reliable witness. In my own mind, I have no doubt that he sighted the object he describes. The enclosed photograph has been certified as an exact replica of the pad made by the UFO by numerous witnesses who witnessed it, who visited the scene the same day and on the following day. To my mind, as a coast watcher, the most curious feature of the whole affair is that neither of the two teams of RAF investigators, Royal Australian Air Force investigators, even bothered to interview the young man concerned. And what does that tell you about the Royal Australian Air Force's lack of serious interest in this topic, even back then? Couldn't even get off the fat ass to interview George Pedley. Investigators two teams of RAF investigators, neither of them even bothered to interview the young man concerned. What gives, chum? This was how John Buist often referred to his friend, possibly. Coast watching and other allied activities would thus offer a somewhat futile activity. I have no doubt the young man saw the object he described. I questioned him repeatedly and could not shake his description in any way, and it in no way resembles a helicopter of any design, which is what the police constable had indicated in his report, what he thought it could have been. The pad itself, as per photograph, is most unusual in that the area flattened is also sucked up about 3 to 4 feet off the ground. Alf McDonald of the Rainforest Committee was able to walk in a crouched position right across the area. Also, that the grass and reeds were bruised, not burnt. I would welcome your comments off the record, if necessary. All well here, more later. Affectionately, Johnny, who is John Buist. So there you go. Fascinating exchange from friend of Prime Minister Harold Holt, reporting to him, Prime Minister Harold Holt, about this Tully Nest UFO sighting and nest only a month after it happened. Now, it would be fascinating to know, did Harold Holt's buddy John Buist, ever receive return correspondence from Prime Minister Harold Holt? What was the level of interest that Prime Minister Harold Holt took in the UFO topic? I know Shane Ryan is trying hard to try and get more, dig for more documents, but this is a fascinating find. And I know Bill Chalker was quite excited about it because for him, it connected quite a lot of dots in other areas. And we'll come to Bill in just a moment. So then it has some supporting records as well. So John Buist then put together a handwritten account of his interview with George Pedley. So this reads, now this is a description. These are Shane's comments here about this document you're looking at on screen. This is a description of the UFO incident by John Buist, presumably attached to the above letter, found in the same archive, in the National Archives. And it reads, URAMO, January 19th, approximately 9 a.m. So this is obviously John writing down what he heard from George during the interview. So George Pedley, age 28, banana farmer of URAMO, while driving to work on his farm in an old Ferguson tractor, possibly, heard above the considerable noise of his tractor a loud hissing noise, which he thought at first to be a blowout in his tractor tire. On glancing ahead at a distance of no more than 25 yards, he observed a large grey cylindrical object approximately 25 feet long by 9 feet deep, shaped like two inverted saucers joined together with protuberances approximately 2 feet high on the top and on the bottom, as per enclosed sketch. And you'll see that in just a moment. The object was hovering above the 9 foot high reeds when, that's pretty tall, when first observed. Suddenly rose to approximately 30 feet and set off at a terrific speed, vanishing at 45-degree angle on a south by southwest course in the direction of Charters Towers, which is a nearby town. No sign of human life aboard, no portholes or other apertures in either top or bottom of structure. Actually, is that the right? Oh, there we go. Of structure. No sign whatsoever of flame, smoke, or vapor. Very loud noise decreased as object disappeared at high speed. Whole incident occupied about half a minute at the longest. Again, consistent with 15 to 30 seconds. On examination by numerous credible witnesses, the reeds in the pad itself were found not only to be flattened as per photograph, but were also lifted out approximately 3 to 4 feet off the ground, apparently by suction in a clockwise direction. The following day, approximately 50 feet away and close together, were discovered two similar pads in structure, but smaller in size and rotated by the same principle, but in an anti-clockwise direction. In a 2.5-hour cross-examination, the witness, he's talking about George Pedley, was quite unshakable in his description of the object and did not once in any way vary any detail of the object. The sighting is unusual in that it took place at 9 a.m. on a clear day. And he signs off J.H. Buist, Bingle Bay, 20th of February, 1966. So Shane goes on to note that URAMO was the locality name in common use at the time in UFO literature, though it's often again been referred to the Tully Nest incident, even though it wasn't in the town of Tully. It was in an adjoining town, which is Tully's about 8 k's to the north of this URAMO. The location of the incident is now called Rockingham, approximately 2 kilometers east of URAMO. John Buist lived in Bingle Bay, about 40 kilometers north of URAMO. The above documents are located, so these documents I've shown you are located within a file at the National Archives of Australia titled Personal Papers of Prime Minister Holt, Departmental and Ministerial Correspondence. And so then this is the drawing of George Pedley of what he saw. And no doubt about it, certainly resembles what we would consider flying saucer in shape. And here is obviously a photograph, authentic photograph of the Tully Nest. And again, what is really fascinating about Harold Holt is that, again, thanks to the good research of TP Loft 2008 that's called my attention to this, Harold Holt actually owned a house in the nearby town of Garner's Beach, just down the road essentially from Tully. And even before building his house up there, he was frequent travelers to the area. So is that why, again, interesting connection, that maybe it's because the fact that Prime Minister Holt had an affinity with the area, was kind of a local to a degree, that his buddy John felt it would be an interesting story to share with him. But again, it begs the question, what was Prime Minister Harold Holt's interest, if any, in the UFO topic? So fascinating documentation that, again, kudos to Shane Ryan for being able to secure that from the National Archives of Australia. So that is the Tully Nest incident, my friends. I hope you found that interesting. I do want to give an opportunity for your comments to be seen and heard. So I know that we're going back a little while here, but I know Bill had to jet, so thank you, Bill, posthumously. A bit of an in-joke with Bill there. I hope you enjoy the rest of the live stream when you watch it, and we're going to have a look at some of your that's what we haven't looked at yet, some of your reporting. So we'll look at that in just a moment. Let's have a look. JD, never been to a UFO conference. I hadn't either. That was my first. Lot of fun, and meet a lot of interesting people as well. Some a little, more on one end of the spectrum than the others, but you're going to get that at obviously a UFO, such a fascinating topic. Grant, FYI, Westall time period back during the event. There was also bases at Point Cook, Mornington, Portsea, and Suburban. I've gone after records at Point Cook. Didn't have any success getting anything Westall related though. Jimmy, there's always next year, my friend. Hopefully you can get along to it. Next year. And the costumes were pretty awesome indeed. Let's have a look at some of the. It was a truly surreal experience just being able to get out and go to the site where all this went down. Again, it's reliant heavily on only one individual, George Pedley. So there's no way to corroborate what it is he saw. You kind of have to take his account at face value. But again, no judgment. It's a fascinating account, story, experience, nonetheless. And yeah, it was a pretty cool experience being able to get in there. And I didn't want to venture into the lagoon because, again, we were told to steer clear because there are crocs in the area. So I kept my ground. Let's have a look at some of the other. Oh, thank you so much for your kind words there, Alex. Super underrated channel. Thanks for all your hard work, Grant. Appreciate the content. Thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate your sentiment there. Did more people see the saucer? No, it was only George. So, and that's why I say it's you gotta kind of take that into consideration as well. That was only witness. Shorter to Cook, thank you for joining, my friend, and thank you so much for your generous donation. I do really appreciate it. I'm the same, Aaron. Crop circle hoaxes certainly are frustrating. Karen's comment: we had an unusual experience with the weather last year. It was warm, sunny, windy day. Then out of nowhere, a swirl of thick, white, large cloud mass settled right above the house. That's interesting. Sounds quite. That sounds very close encounters of the third kind-ish. The kind of scene at the end at the was it Devil's Tower where the clouds kind of form. So that's the visual that I just got reading that. And Karen goes on to say it's cold and windless. Then after 15 minutes, it evaporated and went back to warm and sunny. Reservoir, Victoria, Australia. Suburbs quite large, so I can disclose location. Interesting. That is very, very strange indeed, Karen. Let's have a look at some of the other comments that late to the party. Grant, welcome, a fellow Grant. Any news on next year's 60th anniversary of Westall? When? 6th of April. There is definitely being put together some pretty cool event to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Westall incident. I don't have any details. Wonderful fellow researcher Irene Previn is doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, working with others to organize a wonderful event. So I have no doubt at all that it's going to be a really one to make sure you get to next year. If you're a Melburnian and you're interested in the UFO topic, particularly Westall, get down to it. If you're an interstater and you're interested in the Westall, come on down. I'll certainly be there. I'm keen to get to as many of the annual reunion events as I can, but the 60th anniversary is going to be a big one. Dorothy, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining from your side of the pond very early in the morning where you are. And Aaron, you make a good point. There needs to be a movie about Westall 60. It would certainly make a truly fascinating film, because Westall has everything. It's got the cover up, it's got the confiscation of evidence, it's got telling witnesses to shut up, it's got military presence, it's got, as Joy Clark likes to refer to, men in black, that were people in suits. You've got the teacher, what he saw. You've got the children, what I saw. They've got the alleged landing or object getting close to the ground at the Grange. You've got Channel 9 covering it that afternoon, but then the footage of the airing of that news story has vanished, all those decades ago. So, I mean, it's got possibly everything you can think of in a truly fascinating UFO case that would certainly make for compelling viewing. Grant says, pretty close to Westall. I used to work with a guy that was at school back in the day, a few years back. Good one. Yeah, I've been down to the Grange area a couple of times, and it's a great little. It's fascinating that it obviously looks a bit different today. But there's nothing quite like being on location where something so fantastical was alleged to have happened. And it's for someone that takes the topic seriously, but also is also interested by the stories. It's kind of a surreal experience being on location at the site where something so historic was, took place. Grant goes on to say, and I agree, Jojo, Westall is absolutely fascinating case, certainly one of my favorites. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an Aussie. Another friend of mine used to be air traffic control in the 70s at Tullamarine. He says that they used to see lights not on radar and things on radar they could not see with their eyes. Yeah, makes me think of the Frederick Valentich case. Nothing on radar. It's not a plane. It's not aircraft. And there you go. I was right on point with you. Been following this stuff since I was 8, back when Valentich disappeared in 78. Aussie was always good to see you in the chat. Thank you for maybe they took Harold Holt. He drowned, or if you believe the conspiracy theories, he was taken by a Chinese submarine. I don't know if I lend a whole lot of credence to that that theory, but again, it's one of them that's out there. USO maybe took him. The plot thickens indeed. It was reported that he drowned, but again, the conspiracy theories were rampant that it was the Chinese that got him with the sub. And again, some have suggested that, and it could be the reason why Harold Holt disappeared, because he was digging too deep into what happened in Tully. No idea, but interesting to consider as well. It's very true, Dorothy. These sightings often occur with only one witness, waiting for them to touch down on the White House lawn in Washington, D.C. For all of us that crave corroboration, evidence, that's what's, I guess, I feel for experiences in the sense that they often have, absolutely nothing to gain and everything to lose. They've got nothing to gain by coming forward and sharing their account of something that happened to them that was truly extraordinary. And more often than not, they don't have any evidence of what it was they saw. They've just got this imprinted in their memory for the rest of their days, something that truly extraordinary happened. And you only have to listen to, my good pal Clark Watson, fascinating experience that he had. It's an account of what he experienced, and he knows that he isn't able to bring any, evidence in terms of photographic evidence, corroboration, other people that saw it. So, that's why it is, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. If you're I've never had a sighting. I'd love to. That would give me much more empathy with other experiences that have seen something. And I do feel for folks that do see something that they're unable to identify, reconcile, or explain, but that they don't have anything other than their own recollection or account to bring to the table. And that's not to say that they're full of shit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that must be a real sense of frustration for folks that do experience something extraordinary, but they don't they can get it off their chest, they can share it, but they don't have any evidence to kind of have others believe in their account. And maybe they're not they don't care if others believe in their account. I don't know. Again, I haven't experienced, but I'm always willing and prepared to listen to experiences. In a lot of cases, I believe what they believe they are saying happened to them. It's not for me to say you're full of shit or I believe you. It's just for me to listen to a very interesting and compelling account and to digest that. And often I can't do anything with it, but it's fascinating to always hear from people that have had a truly extraordinary experience. Channel 9 footage missing. So is Don Lane's show interview with a guy from the US then talked about Valentic. Anyone have a copy? Yeah, good point. Don Lane, I knew Don Lane, not well, but he was he loved his basketball, and he was a basketball coach of a good friend of mine who went to St. Ignatius College in Sydney, where I grew up. Don Lane was a funny fella. They had the old Don Lane show from back in the day. It was a funny show. Geez, so many comments, folks. It's great to see some of you contributing. I wish I had sighting too, but it'd be frustrating to have no one believe you. I guess that's a sense of frustration for a lot. I'm not speaking for all experiences, but I'm sure that there are some that are frustrated that they can't provide anything other than their own account. Keith, great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for reposting this stream. I really appreciate it. Dorothy says, I've had a couple of experiences in life. One mass sighting with friends, 1966. There's that year again. 67, another close-up in 1997. Phoenix Lights year. Dad was in World War II, US Air Force. Fascinating. My personal connection to, well, I'm going to come to that. So I'll leave. That's a good segue, Dorothy, into what we're going to talk about now. This is the last comment. Saw bright orange orb light near Narrawarren back in 97 for about 10 minutes. Was seen in the area for 2 weeks in local journal. See, damn, I'm jealous of you guys that have seen something, because I would love to. I've never had an experience, but I would. It's on my bucket list nonetheless. A few folks have been telling me I should get out there and attend CE5 with folks that do it. I'm open to it. I won't discount it. So I want to wrap up shortly, folks, because we're getting up on the time. But I do want to give a good shout out to my good friend Reese. Reese Morgan does some wonderful work on his YouTube channel, the UFO Aussie. He does a great job. Actually, you know what? I'll see if I can bring up his channel for you, because it's a good one. Sorry, Reese. What did I say? Morgan. Reese Dalton Morgan, I should say. Geez, I need the old coffee to get me through. But Reese did a wonderful deep dive on his channel not too long ago on a place that is close to my heart through my heritage, that of Woomera. So if you haven't had a look at this deep dive that Reese did, I would encourage you to check it out. It's a fascinating, really overview of the whole mystique of Woomera. So Reese Dalton Morgan, his grandfather was pretty much in charge of Woomera, and Woomera was, a very mysterious place, not only because of the top secret missile and rocketry testing that was being done there. There were a lot of UFO sightings, and Reese's grandfather, he reported to, I think it was Canberra as well as a local base, an instance where there was a Black Knight rocket that was being tested, and there was a UFO sighting in conjunction with that test. So Tom Dalton Morgan, Reese's grandfather, is he did a wonderful video on his grandfather in an earlier video, but this is a really good watch. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. Link is in the description below. Let me show you a brief clip from this deep dive that Reese does on Woomera, because it has an interesting connection to my family. So let me play this for you. Let's get rid of that. Here we go.
Woomera Range was a global hub for advanced science and technology research. Not only did it participate in the Mercury and Gemini space programs, it was also crucial to the first moon landing. During the Cold War, Woomera had the second highest amount of rocket launches in the world, only after NASA's facilities at Cape Canaveral. This included Australia launching their first satellite into space called RESAT, making them only the third country in the world to do so. In fact, Australian UAP researcher Grant Levac's uncle, Des Barnsley, was the project manager for RESAT. This was the golden age of space exploration in Australia. One might say Woomera has a laudatory purpose, if you catch my drift.
Whoops. There you have it. That is my uncle, Des Barnsley, my mother's brother, who has late brother sadly passed a number of years ago. He was project manager for RESAT, Australia's first satellite that was launched into orbit, into space. And Woomera was a top secret facility where a lot of this stuff was being tested, your rocketry, missiles, and obviously Reese's grandfather, Tom Dalton Morgan, literally ran Woomera, and Woomera was also where, for a time, Harry Turner was stationed. So Harry Turner was kind of like Australia's J. Allen Hynek. He was the one, he was a nuclear scientist who was fascinated by the UFO topic, and he investigated UFO cases, and he put together that now, often talked about 1971 minute paper for the Joint Intelligence Organization, which Jesse Michaels and David Grush and Carl Nell have referenced a number of times, where Harry Turner did really an appraisal of the US's efforts to investigate the UFO phenomenon from the 40s through to the 70s, and efforts in academia to crack anti-gravity or gravity and crack anti-gravity and so on. So it's just interesting. Woomera is a fascinating place. I'm looking forward to catching up with Reese in the not too distant future. What I want to leave you with before we depart is there is a another truly wonderful video that Reese put out on his channel only in the last week, and I would encourage you to have a look at it if you haven't yet seen it. Two wonderful gents, Reese and Clark Watson. Clark's experience is truly fascinating. He is a true advocate and wonderful researcher behind the scenes that really cares about and advocates for experiences and the pain and mental health anguishes that they go through, because people are experiencing real trauma in their lives as a result of these experiences that they have with UAP UFOs. So my hat off to this great conversation with both Clark and Reese. If you haven't had a look at it, do check it out. And I will say check it out for this added reason as well, that Unhidden, which is a wonderful group that I'm proud to have had some affiliation with for a while now, not in an official capacity, but Unhidden referenced this great interview that Reese did with Clark, and they clipped it. They put a clip on their X channel, or their X feed. It's almost 7 minutes, so I won't play it obviously. But if you just pull up Unhidden, you can go to their X feed and you can pull up that clip. Or if you want to look at the entire interview of Clark with Reese, check it out. Link is in the show notes below. Again, fascinating conversation, because what I really respect and appreciate about Clark is that, again, he is heavily invested in advocating for the mental health of those that have an experience. And to that point, Unhidden, the group that is really advocating for the health of the mental health and health impacts that UAPs, the effects of health, the health effects of UAP on those that have an experience or encounter. Unhidden has only recently put out a very comprehensive white paper, a report, and I'll pull this up for you. I haven't yet had an opportunity to sink my teeth into it, but I have heard from a number of well-respected folks in the community that it is a wonderful read. It doesn't jump to any conclusions about what UAP are or what they aren't. It really just admits the fact that there are people out there that are experiencing some pretty weird stuff. They're seeing some pretty weird stuff, and they are suffering from health effects, trauma. And so this is a pretty comprehensive white paper. I'll just read it. On the 25th of August, the Unhidden Foundation launched its report on the health effects of encounters with UAP. This document, with a foreword by Dr. Jacques Vallée, is a literature review drawing together published sources on medical signs and symptoms linked to UAP. The main findings are, number one, let me zoom on in so it's a little easier on the eyes for you. Oops. UAP are real, confirmed by the US government and acknowledged in reports prepared by the UK government. Fact. UAP can affect human health, shown by evidence from US government commissioned research. 3. Likely mechanisms of injury include exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic radiation, particularly UHF and microwave, with additional reports of autoimmune conditions, physical wounds, and psychological trauma. Civilians lack access to knowledge about the health effects of UAP. Independent medical research is urgently needed, and past US government research held by agencies such as the Defense Intelligence Agency should be released. Unhidden welcomes constructive comments on the report, which should be sent to the email address. They'll be incorporated into a future second edition. The message is clear. Policymakers must consider the health impacts of UAP on citizens alongside national security and safety of flight concerns. It sounds like a pretty sensible and common sense extension of what the US Department of Defense is doing to better understand the nature and extent of UAP that could have potential national security threat and safety of flight implications. So if people are experiencing health-related effects as a result of UAP, then there should be a comparable effort. So my hat goes off to the team at Unhidden. I'm looking forward to diving into this report because, again, it is a pretty meaty one. It's if I pull it up for you, it's 48 pages, detailed literature review. So I've put the link in the I believe I've put the link in the description, so you can have a good read of it at your leisure. And it obviously goes into some case history, sightings, and encounters. It talks about Rendlesham, Cash Landrum, physiological symptoms and their possible mechanisms. So again, doesn't get into it's not about what is behind UAP. It's about these are real physiological and psychological effects that UAP have on folks that have reported those injuries and trauma. So I'm just looking forward to diving in and having a good read of it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to walk you through, folks, this evening. The one thing that we haven't talked about is what is coming up. And we're going to get under the 3 hours, which is always good. So what's next? What's ahead? Well, we know that thanks to some comments from Representative Eric Burleson, that there is another hearing, a congressional hearing now scheduled for next month, the 9th of September, which will be the 10th of September for us Aussies. So we know that they're hoping to have, I believe, 3 to 5 witnesses, that at least 2 of them being first-hand witnesses. Now, we don't know who these individuals are. It hasn't been announced. I put out on X not too long ago who I thought would be good to call to testify, or if they're a hostile witness, who to subpoena to testify. These are folks that I would love to see testify in due course. And if you go from left, column by column, you've got Admiral Tom Wilson, top left. Directly beneath him, Eric Davis. At the bottom left, Harold Putoff. Middle top, you have James Lukatsky. Beneath him, Jay Stratton. I know Jimmy's favorite at bottom. You've got our friend Timothy Taylor. At the top right, you have, or someone remind me, his name escapes me. It'll come to me in just a second. Middle on the far right, you have Glenn Gaffney, who we've heard about in Chris Sharp's reporting, and everyone's favorite at the bottom right, Bob Lazar. So wouldn't that be interesting to have those individuals testify under oath in a public congressional hearing? So that would be, I have no idea who's going to testify at the upcoming congressional hearing. I don't think we're going to see any of those folks that I would love to see testify, but one can dream. That is it, folks. We're at just under 2.5 hours. Always so wonderful to have so many friends and people I recognize in the chat. A couple of comments just before we wrap up, because I do want to obviously give you your 2 cents. And obviously, thank you for engaging with me throughout this live stream. Thank you, Jojo Diamonds, for joining. Happy to have a chat with you in the not too distant future, Grant. Need to talk. Grant, my stepfather was also at Woomera at some time, I believe you might have mentioned that. That's right, in some correspondence we had. Electrical fitter, amateur winder, but he never talked about his work. He passed in 1982. On a side note, I'm actually having lunch with my aunt in the coming weeks. My late uncle, Des's wife, who's in her 90s now, but she's sharp as a tack. And so she lives in Canberra. She's visiting Melbourne with her family. So looking forward to catching up with her in a couple of weeks to pick her brain on what my uncle may have talked to her about, and if obviously she was familiar with Reese Dalton Morgan's grandfather, Tom Dalton Morgan, Harry Turner. Again, Woomera is just such a fascinating place, I should say. Aaron, perhaps Helpline should get in touch with Unhidden, because it would be good for them to have an experienced expert to be on the line for them. I know that Unhidden is certainly exploring. They're not they don't offer support, but they're certainly advocating for support and care for those that experience trauma or physiological, psychological effects from UAP. So you can only say hats off to their mission and what they're trying to achieve to create greater awareness about the health effects of UAP. Irrespective of what UAP are, kudos to them for taking the topic seriously. Jimmy, scrap Bob Lazar, not interested in seeing him on the list. Dorothy, thank you for your kind words, my friend. I'm a bit on the fence with Bob Lazar as well. I think there are a couple of questions about his education, but I would still love to see him testify and tell us where that element 115 is. And ask her where the big one is buried. Ross keeps talking about it. Yeah, he was asked that question by one of my fellow speakers at the Australian UFO Festival, and I respect Ross's answer for why he has chosen and exercised journalistic integrity not to reveal the location of the UFO too big that they had to build a building over it. So I'm not going to ask questions that others have already asked and that Ross has already answered. Great question, Grant. We all want to know where the big one is buried. We do, and who knows? Hopefully, we'll all get some info on that in due course. Keep Bob on there, says Hoodwink the Ranger. Well, look, that's everything, folks. Again, truly appreciate you taking some time out of your Thursday evening or your Thursday morning, wherever you are. Always good to have some great engagement, and I'm always kind of touched by the number of questions that you guys asked and that you have engagement amongst one another in the chat. So as always, appreciate your time, your attendance and attention, and look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. Until then, have a wonderful weekend and see you again soon. Thanks again.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.